Welcome back. It is the Fans College Football Podcast. Barrett, Sallee, John Michaels with you, recapping the latest week in the greatest sport in the world. And John, it was, I think, billed as the best week of the season. It did not disappoint. I think Georgia and Alabama was the one that I think a lot of us around here were excited to talk about. And man, that Crimson Tide team made a statement on the road, ending the longest home winning streak in college football. It was a very impressive performance for a Tide team that really needed that.
Barrett, from where they were 3 weeks ago to where they are now is absolutely insane. You're talking about a team that got physically beat up when they played Florida State a couple of weeks ago. I mean, at the lines of scrimmage, they had no chance in that game. And then all of a sudden you get here against Georgia and they play like Alabama. Now, they gave up a lot of plays on the ground. Georgia ran the ball better than Alabama did, but Alabama acquitted themselves in the biggest game. It was a must-win not only for Kalen DeBoer, but I think for Ty Simpson as well. Ty has thrown himself now right at the top of the Heisman Trophy consideration because of the way he played.
Yeah, I think for Kalen DeBoer, this was absolutely necessary. I'm not saying he was on the hot seat. He wasn't, but the lack of consistency, the lack of development, the inability to play disciplined, that is something that really has plagued him since the moment that he stepped on campus. And that wasn't the case in Athens, in a very hostile environment. It's not the most hostile environment in college football. In fact, I think Sanford Stadium is a little bit overrated in that regard. But I think when you look at that Alabama team, if you're playing in a movie studio, they still would find a way to do really dumb things. And they didn't against Georgia. So that to me sort of completes the circle, so to speak, for Kalen DeBoer, because you know he's got the talent on that roster. He's got the offensive acumen. We've seen that everywhere he's gone. And now he sort of feels like he's built this team to a point where it has the same sort of discipline as a Nick Saban coached team, because I'll be honest, in the second half, Alabama was not the better team. Georgia was significantly better, but Alabama still found a way to get the job done by not shooting itself in the foot, by making smart plays, by not taking risks, both offensively and defensively. And it was the signature win of the Kalen DeBoer era. And now if you're Georgia, you're essentially 2 games back of Alabama in the race for the SEC championship game. Now that doesn't really matter all that much in terms of the race for the college football playoff, but that ring in Atlanta makes a ton of difference in terms of your prestige within the conference. And now Georgia's going to be fighting an uphill battle to try to get to Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, Barrett, for the first time in a long time, also, Kirby Smart has questions that he has to answer, because I thought he got out-coached in this game, to be honest with you. You have the situation where you decide to go for it on 4th down. And look, he doubled and tripled down and said this was a sequencing play. This is what we like to run. We run it a couple of times against Tennessee, and it worked. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. The problem is you give it to Cash Jones instead of Chauncey Bowens. The problem is you're down 24-21 in a game that you had not led the entire way on your home field with a chance to tie the game. I'm normally a super aggressive guy. I think you've known me long enough that I'm going to be overly aggressive. But in that situation, tying the football game was the right play. Unfortunately, you don't. Unfortunately, you have a freshman receiver who drops a pass down the field. You have Ellis Robinson. I get it. The game is over. Alabama had gotten the first down, diving into the pile like a missile at the end of the game. And there are things about this Georgia team, but let's be honest. You're a missed field goal from being 0-2 in the SEC right now. I don't feel like, at least this point of the season, that this is a special Georgia team. That doesn't mean they can't make a run into the postseason and make it into the college football playoff and then all bets are off. But right now, they just don't feel special. They feel good. They don't feel elite.
Yeah, I agree. Oregon feels elite, though, because going into Penn State, the Whiteout game, always a fun atmosphere. I've never been to State College, but that's one place, bucket list at night, Whiteout, just an unbelievable game with Oregon basically controlling it for 55 minutes. And then, bam, you see Penn State come out of the coffin like the Undertaker and forces overtime. And then Oregon, look, Oregon's the better team. Dante Moore, I think, is the front runner to win the Heisman Trophy right now. Oregon's defense for the majority of that game showed that it can play at an elite level. That's Dan Lanning's MO. That's the DNA. He wants to own the line of scrimmage. He's done a pretty good job of that. But against a team like Penn State that has a good defense, you're going to lose some battles here and there. And they did late in that game, but they found a way to get the job done. But on the James Franklin side, I said this after the Orange Bowl last year, the national semifinal, getting criticized for losing to top 10, top 5 teams, it is way overblown for a guy like James Franklin. It's really hard to beat top 5 teams. It's really hard to beat top 10 teams. And Penn State, James Franklin doesn't like to hear this, they are playing at a little bit of a talent disadvantage. Not a lot, but a little bit. And so if you're going to go into big games and you're going to come up just short, that's going to happen. You're a walk-off field goal away from going to the national championship game last year. Is James Franklin an elite coach? No. Does he deserve the criticism that he's getting from losing another top 10 game? No. He's going to give you a chance more times than not. Pretty much every game, he's going to give you a chance. If you're a Penn State fan, isn't that all you want? Isn't that all you need? It's not like you're going to be a juggernaut. You're not going to be Ohio State. And that's okay, because you don't have to in the college football playoff. If you get there, you just got to find the right matchups.
Yeah, I'll disagree with that. I think Penn State fans want to expect. You're talking about a guy that's not 4-21 against top 10 teams. And I get it. Okay, you might be at a slight talent disadvantage. You're still Penn State. You're still in the Big Ten. You still can get any recruit that you want. And unfortunately for James Franklin, it's been a situation where in these games, he cost them. It's 3-3. You've got a 4th down play at the Oregon 36-yard line. You decide to punt the ball. You punt it, it goes into the end zone. You netted 16 yards because you had some coward play call. You have a quarterback that I don't think, quite frankly, he can trust. Drew Allar, if I see another person put him as a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, they need to take away your top 10 credential, because he's not a top 10 pick. The only reason he's seen as a great quarterback is because he's tall and he's playing at Penn State. Because that dude is so average, it's not funny. He had 130-something yards passing. He only had 100 yards offense until their final 2 drives of the game. And then, of course, he throws the interception when it really matters. Penn State is the biggest beneficiary of having a college football playoff, because they can beat up on a bunch of garbage-ass teams like they will. They'll lose the biggest games they play, because they play at Ohio State in a couple of weeks, and they're probably going to get beat there. They might beat Indiana, they might not. And because the name is Penn State, they'll be in the playoffs. Barrett, the fact that they are still number 7 in the AP poll, when they've beaten FIU, Nevada, and Villanova, is strictly on rep. It's a joke. They're an average football team at best. They'll never win a national title while on the line.
It's really hard to win a national title, though. I mean, it is. That's the thing is my thing in this new era of the college football playoff, by and large, for most teams not named Ohio State, Alabama, even Georgia, maybe even Oregon at some point, if you're just getting yourself into a position to win it, then you're going to be okay. And Penn State making it to a national semifinal and coming up short against a team that really was in it in the fourth quarter to win a national title 1 week later. I just don't know I don't know what the expectation should be at a place like Penn State, which, I mean, look, you and I probably agree. It's hard to recruit to State College, Pennsylvania. It's in the middle of nowhere. So it's, to me, I just think if you're a Penn State fan, I think the expectations need to be taken back a little bit and say, look, made a semifinal last year, almost won it. You're in position to win it more times than not. Like you said, you're going to be in it a lot of times. You might play some garbage teams and get in. So I don't know, differing opinions on Penn State. I like James Franklin. I still think he can get to the playoff and potentially win it, or at least get to the national championship game at some point. Now, LSU's not going to. I picked LSU to win the national championship, and I am dumb. I am not. I am very bad at this. LSU with Garrett Nussmeier is not a championship caliber team. LSU with Brian Kelly is not a national championship caliber team. With Blake Baker, it's not a national championship caliber team. Lane Kiffin coached circles around Brian Kelly and that defensive staff at LSU. I mean, it wasn't even fun. You're taking a guy in Trinidad Chambliss, a D2 transfer, and you're making him look like a top 5 pick. That's how good Lane Kiffin is. And Lane Kiffin, I think he is unfairly viewed. He's not that massive troll. He's very soft-spoken. He speaks through his actions offensively, and then he talks the smack, which is fine. If you can do it, then you can dish it out all you want. And Lane Kiffin deserves a ton of credit for everything that's gone on at Ole Miss this year. Because look, Austin Simmons, I think he had got a little too much praise before the season. I do, but he's still a good quarterback. I think he got the praise because of one drive against Georgia in November last year, and that's fine. He looked awesome in that drive. But Trinidad Chambliss, if you put him in there and then there's no drop off, in fact, there might be an improvement. It's unbelievable what Lane can do offensively. The man is an absolute wizard. And now he's got Ole Miss in a position where they actually can make the college football playoff, not just hope to make the college football playoff.
I said last week that I didn't think Ole Miss would be physical enough for LSU. I can raise my hand. I was wrong. Yeah. Ole Miss showed me that they are plenty physical at the lines of scrimmage. Trinidad Chambliss had almost 400 yards of total offense by himself. Might have had over 400 yards. They're right close because he had about 72 yards on the ground, over 300 yards throwing the football. They were the better team, and the score doesn't indicate how much better of a team they are. LSU offensively is stuck in one. Garrett Nussmeier, get him off every Heisman list. He's not a Heisman Trophy quarterback. I think he's another one that got overhyped coming into this year because he had some somewhat gaudy numbers, even though he threw a bunch of interceptions. Is he hurt? I don't know. His coach is telling us he's not hurt. He looks hurt. Now they lose Anderson, the wide receiver. He gets banged up with the elbow injury. But LSU can't run the ball. Hey, Brian Kelly, when you cried to reporters 2 weeks ago and you said, how dare you ask us about running the ball, we can run when we need to. We had 59 yards running the football. You can't run it when you need to. You can't run it ever. Your offensive system is old and antiquated. Blake Baker has lived by the blitz, die by the blitz. I know Blake Baker. He was Miami's defensive coordinator. We wanted his ass run out of town about 5 years ago. We were happy that he was gone. Beating up on Florida and beating up on Louisiana Tech and a Clemson team that's not very good. You showed this weekend that you're not that good of a football team. I don't think LSU's going to make the postseason. They'll make one crappy bowl game, and guess what? Brian Kelly, he'll be 3-loss Brian again, as he is every year down and back.
It's funny because now, like I jumped on the fire Les Miles bandwagon before a lot of other people, and I got criticized relentlessly for it in Baton Rouge. I even got emails from LSU administrators asking what my problem was. That's a true story. Not going to tell you who, but Les Miles was furious with me. But it's almost like Brian Kelly is going down the exact same path. Tries to have a good defense.
He doesn't have a national title.
He doesn't have a national title. Does have some appearances, but to me, Brian Kelly is the offensive, like you said, antiquated system. And then he tries to live and die by the defense. Blake Baker was good at Missouri, not good at LSU. So now they're sitting there trying to figure out, okay, what is the new identity? Because this identity doesn't work. LSU's identity right now doesn't work. And you mentioned Garrett Nussmeier. Look, is he hurt? Probably. I think he's hurt. I don't think he's injured, but he's hurt. And so you have to find a way to move and work around those limitations because there are some. But it's been a rough go of it for LSU. But Ole Miss deserves this. Ole Miss fans deserve this. Lane Kiffin deserves this because that was just a masterpiece in coaching last week against the Tigers in the Magnolia Bowl. All right, this week, Miami and Florida State. Florida State obviously coming off one of the most. I don't know about you. I thought that receiver died. I don't know how the two defenders and the receiver got up in that Florida State-Virginia game once that crowd rushed the field. That was one of the most epic field storms of all time. But now Florida State is struggling. Miami, of course, your boys doing just fine in the top 5. I'm going to leave the analysis to you. I'm just going to take Miami -4.5.
There becomes a point, you know me pretty well. The passion for certain games is different. The Notre Dame game at the beginning of this year is different. The Florida game a couple of weeks ago is different. But the level of disdain and hatred for Florida State is above all of them. This goes back to the early 1980s. You know, my first game I ever remember watching as a kid was 1983. Jeff Lee Davis kicks a field goal as time expires. Miami wins 17-16, goes on to win the national title. We've had wide rights. We've had wide lefts. We've had the block at the Rock a few years ago that Florida State did. We've had blowouts 2 years ago. I sat down in Miami 3 years ago, devastated as Florida State beats us 45-3. It's almost back to where it needs to be, where two teams are really good. But I think, just to get to the analysis side, Florida State showed some warts against Virginia that weren't just we have a bad game. On the lines of scrimmage, they're still weak. Defensive line, they're not good. Virginia pushed them all over the place. Offensive line, they're not all that good. Their defensive line couldn't get pressure with 4. I'm going to tell you, you're going against the great wall of Alex Mirabal in this game. They're going to have a hard time getting to Carson back, which means what? Now you got to start dialing up pressure. Miami runs the ball really well. Miami's defensive line, I'd argue, is the best defensive line in the entire country. I think Florida State's got their hands full. I wasn't nervous about FSU even before the Virginia game, and I saw Chris Palika tweet out, Miami better be careful. Florida State coming off a loss. Who cares? Why does the team need a loss to be good? That's a bunch of horse crap is what that is. Miami's a better football team on the lines. That's normally what wins road games. My only interest in this one that kind of scares me, it's Miami's first time on the road all season long. How do they handle a very hostile environment? Because Dope is going to be rocking. But I got the Canes. I got the Canes minus 4.5. Miami's going to win this game, and they'll be inside the top 5 probably for the rest of the season.
I agree. I think Miami is legit this year, and I know a lot of folks hate Miami, especially people our age. Hate Miami because we know Miami. A lot of us wanted our teams to be Miami when we were kids, and I think this year they absolutely are legit. Vandy and Alabama.
In the state of Georgia, a lot of people hate Miami because of me, which is great. I love it.
That's true.
I wear it as a badge on.
That's true. I mean, I kind of do too. That's just kind of how things operate. Vandy and Alabama, revenge game for the Crimson Tide. This is a different Vanderbilt team. I mean, it is. Last week, they played Utah State. They win by 20. This is a Vandy team that in years past, you played some random Mountain West team after a couple of good games. You play some random MAC team after a couple good games, and you fall flat on your face, or you win by 23-20, or whatever. Diego Pavia and crew, Eli Stowers, they went out and just absolutely dominated the second half, put up 55. Now, I know there were some times that was sketchy a little bit, but that's okay. This is a Vandy team that's different. They take care of business. I don't remember a time, even recently, maybe you have to date back to the James Franklin era at Vandy, where you can just sit there and say, okay, they got this handled. No big deal. You don't have to think about it. Just they got this handled. Well, they're not going to have this handled against Alabama because revenge game. I don't care who's the head coach. Those players are embarrassed. They were embarrassed last year. They are going to take this personally. They're going to put their foot on the gas. I love Diego Pavia. I do. I think for him in this game, the attitude that borderlines on arrogance is going to come back to haunt him a little bit. And that means he's going to take too many risks. And I think because Alabama isn't going to take this Vanderbilt team lightly, that this game is going to get sideways. The line right now, as of Monday morning, is 10.5. I wouldn't be surprised by the time toe meets leather that it's more like 13.5 or 14, because I just think that last year you sort of overlooked Vanderbilt, and Clark Lee outcoached Kalen DeBoer. This year, I think everybody inside those walls in the Alabama football complex understand that A, they can't let that happen again, and B, they're not going to take them lightly.
I already pissed off all the Alabama people last week, so why not
do it
again? Yeah, I want to see how they handle success. Under Nick Saban, success was no problem. We knew what was going to happen. Boom. All right, they'd win a game, and then they'd bounce back the next week, and they'd be locked in, ready to roll, steamroll, whomever. Under Kalen DeBoer, they'll win a game, get patted on the back. Because didn't they play Vandy last year, the week after they played Georgia? So you're beating Georgia, you're feeling great, and then you go to Vanderbilt and you lay it in. I still think Alabama will win this game. For the people in Alabama who don't like to listen to these cuts all the way through, they're going to win the game. But I think this is a close game. Diego Pavia and that offense is such a pain in the ass because they milk the clock. They're going to time of possession you. They're going to do death by 1,000 cuts. It's going to be 4 yards here and 3 yards there, and a quarterback run for a first down. I think they'll stay in it, and I think his cockiness is actually needed at a place like Vanderbilt. They need somebody that believes, hey, Alabama isn't the be-all, end-all. I think Vandy keeps it close, Alabama wins it, and Vanderbilt's dream season of being undefeated comes to.
Well, I definitely agree with you on Diego Pavia being the edge that Alabama or that Vandy needs. No doubt about it. This is a Vandy team. Look, again, they take care of business when they should. And that's not normal for Vandy teams. So they're sitting here in the top 20 right now. I'm not saying you need to talk about Vanderbilt in the college football playoff, but they get this win or they fall this game and get another big win down the road. You don't have to really stretch all that much to see them as a 9-win team, and a 9-win team might get in. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. If they beat Alabama, you better get ready for that talk because it is coming. Now, the hot stove season, the hot seat season, the silly season, call it whatever you want. It's spinning already. Sam Pittman fired on Sunday, replaced by our good friend, Bobby Petrino, who everybody who's ever come in contact with him dating back to when I knew him in 2004, just everybody loves him, right? Isn't he the nicest man in the world?
Yeah. Nobody loves him.
Nobody.
And I can't believe, Barrett, that this goes back to the scene of the crime with the neck brace and the abrasions on the face and hightailing out of town. And now all of a sudden he's back coaching.
I know you didn't actually say motorcycle wreck because I think you put those two words in air quotes. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to go down the conspiracy road, but let's just say you put motorcycle accident in air quotes with him, but he's going to get a chance to get this job back. Look, if Arkansas is willing to hire him as their offensive coordinator, bygones have already been bygones, right?
Sure.
So now he's got a chance to coach himself into that head coaching job again. And say what you want about Bobby Petrino. And you could say a lot. He can still draw up some ball plays. He still can. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be surprising to me to see him win that spot again. Hate it for Sam Pittman, the person, because I like him. I think he's a really good dude, really good offensive coordinator. And I guarantee you every SEC school out there not named Arkansas has already placed a call into his agent asking, hey, buddy, you want to come coach an offensive line? And I hope he does get a job doing that. But I think Bobby Petrino has a really good shot of actually getting this job. And you're going to hear a bunch of names. I get it. You're probably going to hear Brent Key's name. That ain't happening. But if I had to say right now, it's going to be Bobby Petrino because I do think in terms of what he can do with the players they have offensively with Washington and with Taylor Green, you're going to see him put together a more consistent offensive game plan. And as a result, you're going to see him get hired again by Arkansas.
Two names that I've already heard thrown about, and they both have ties to Arkansas. One being Rhett Lashley and SMU, ties to Jerry Jones, ties to SMU, ties to Arkansas. I just don't see him leaving a situation at SMU where money is pouring in like hotcakes, and you can go 9-3 and you're going to be a savior forever. The second one I heard would be really fascinating is Gus Malzahn. Malzahn's done a good job through 4 games at Florida State, turning their offense around. You can still see the genius inside a lot of his play calling, jets and the motions and the eye candy, and using Thomas Castellanos. And he was a high school legend in the state of Arkansas. Would he want to go back one final ride and try to revitalize an Arkansas program that's been dormant for a long time? So those are a couple of names that are out there. If I'm Arkansas, it would be anybody but Bobby Petrino. But I have a feeling, being that he's already in-house, if he can turn things around over these next 5 or 6 games and at least make them competitive, not like they were on Saturday when Notre Dame basically was dial a score and did whatever they want, I could see him maybe getting the job. But if I'm them, I'm either calling the Gus bus or I'm ponying up whatever oil money you can find there in Arkansas, whatever Walmart money you've got, and see how much Rhett Lashley wants to come.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Rhett Lashley does that. But he played for Gus as a quarterback in Northwest Arkansas. But Rhett and you said it, perfect situation for a guy like Rhett. I mean, perfect situation at SMU. All right, so let's get some bold predictions. There will be three firings this weekend. It'll be Trent Dilfer at UAB when Army beats UAB at Progressive Stadium in Birmingham. It'll be Luke Fickell at Wisconsin when they get smoked by Michigan. And it will be Billy Napier after Texas runs up and down the field on him at the Swamp. And I'm not the biggest Arch Manning guy at all. I'm not. In fact, I've been consistent in which I think he's very overrated. But Texas is going to roll up and down the field. Those boosters will have seen enough. So you're going to see Trent Dilfer, Luke Fickell, and Billy Napier all fired this weekend.
Interesting. And that would put us up, what now, to 7, 6
7,
or 7
yes.
Power 4 schools. So very interesting there. My bold take is going to be different. I think one of the 3 Texas teams gets upset this weekend.
Okay.
I don't know which one, but you've got Texas on the road against Florida. If Arch Manning is as overrated as a lot of people think, he's going against a really good defense. Florida also has a bye week coming off the teeth kicking they took from Miami, and they're at home, whatever type of home field advantage you feel the Swamp still has. Texas Tech is at Houston. Houston's undefeated. Texas Tech feeling themselves right now, right outside the top 10. So I could see that in a situation where Houston, a fairly good defense, can keep that one close, and maybe they can get over the hump. Don't know if Baron Morton's going to play. I know he's kind of iffy after the hit that he took in the last game that Texas Tech played. And Texas A&M, everybody patting the Aggies on the back. They've got a home game against Mississippi State, who had a devastating loss, had Tennessee beat until they couldn't get them done. One of those three Texas teams goes down this weekend. That's my bold prediction.
I can get down on that. One of them will not be Texas, but my lock of the week does involve Texas and Florida. The under 45.5 or 44.5, I should say. Take the under. I don't think Florida's going to score all that much, and Texas will absolutely control the game from the outset. It will be demoralizing for the Florida offense. They've had a lot of that this year. They'll get that same feeling. They won't be able to get to double digits. Texas will control it throughout, and you're going to see a really ugly game from the Gator side, which makes things even worse for an offensive genius, air quote genius, like Billy Napier. So take the under. Texas controls it throughout, and Florida's offense looks putrid yet again.
If you've listened to my picks on the locker room, usually anything I pick, you just want to take the opposite side. I got the worst picks I've ever had. So take this one with a grain of salt, but my lock of the week is also going to be an over-under. I want to take the under 48.5 in the Georgia-Kentucky game. Kentucky can play defense. They are putrid on the offensive side of the ball. Their quarterback and wide receiver play is not very good. Georgia, I think, is going to have to get back to doing what they do best, run the football, which they did well against Alabama, and learn to play defense Kirby's way again. The good thing is this game, I don't think there's anybody for Kentucky that can stretch the ball vertically, which should allow Georgia's defensive backs to kind of camp out at about 15 yards. I think the Dogs finally get some pressure on the quarterback, finally get some sacks. Keep the under in this one. I could see it being 38-3, 38-7, something like that. I think Georgia rolls in the game, and they keep the game low scoring. It's also that sleepy noon. You know how that is. People are still hungover from the night before. Toppers is a little too packed. People aren't really ready for a big game in Athens.
Toppers. You sound like you've been there a time or two.
I actually have not.
Have you not?
No.
It's a lovely place. It's a lovely place. All right. This has been the Fans College Football Show. Like it, share the show with everybody you know. He's John Michaels. I'm Barrett. Of course, you can find us on 680 The Fan in Atlanta. Download the 680 The Fan app. You can listen to us all over the world. We will talk to you next week.